Career for introverts. Are you an introvert who's looking for an occupation or a career that will actually play to your strengths? Or are you just someone who happens to be a little bit more introverted than most people at your workplace and you feel like the pace is too fast, people talk too much, it's too difficult? If so, watch this video till the end so you get a few options for careers that you might want to do as an introvert and what are some of the distinctions between some different types of introvert people. If you want to find and nurture your ideal vocation, occupation, or hobby, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Also, if you find that you like this video, remember to hit the like button below so it helps the algorithm. So let's start. What makes a person an introvert? Well, by now, most of you watching this probably have a good idea of the whole thing about people have a personality trait that is either more extroverted or more introverted. Now, according to the most robust, scientifically speaking, personality test, the 5-factor model, extroversion is just one of the 5 factors that make up your personality. But for this video, we're going to focus more on the part of whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, and more specifically, when we're talking about you being an introvert. So, being an introvert, what is that really? Well, it's just basically the way in which you go about doing things. Are you the kind of the person who gains energy when you're around a lot of people, the hustle and the bustle, moving around, talking with a lot of strangers in a very quick succession, and you gain energy from that? Then you're more of an extrovert. If you are the kind of person who prefers to deal with one-on-one conversations or small groups and you feel like you lose energy when you are around a big crowd of people over a long period of time, then that means that you're more of an introverted person. By now, if you're watching this video, you likely know or have a good sense of what an introvert is, and that's what you're here for. So let's continue. Now, not all introverts are created equal, so that's something that a distinction we need to make before we actually go into what types of careers you could go for, or to give you an idea of the kind of career that you should be researching or trying to go for yourself. So in order to do that, though, like I mentioned before, we don't want to go into the whole thing about what are your values or what are some of the other 4 key personality traits, which are important if you're looking into, okay, like what kind of job is actually going to help me based on my full personality, not only whether I'm an extrovert or an introvert. But this video is just going to be a very simple guide, as I mentioned, on the extroversion part of your personality. So with that said, I think a very good framework to work with when it comes to different types of introverts, and there are many different types, but I think a very good one is to take your strengths when it comes to your communications. So basically, if we go back to the DISC profiles that Tony Robbins developed, or I don't remember if he developed them, but you can actually take a DISC profile test online. I believe it's free. Just look for it, DISC profile from Tony Robbins. You probably can take it for free, and that will give you a very good idea of the type of person you are. Now, that test gives you 4 dimensions, and 2 of them have to do with being an introvert. So the only difference, according to that test, in terms of your strengths in a general sense of the word, is whether you are an introvert who is more into tasks or who is more into people. Now, you might be saying like, wait, but I'm an introvert. I don't really like dealing that much with people. Well, yes, that's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're not a sociable person at all. So you can see people who, like I mentioned before, they really enjoy talking with people, but they prefer deeper connections, more one-on-one, conversations that are a little bit deeper, and they lose energy when they're among a lot of people, but they gain a lot of energy by dealing with a few select individuals and having a very high quality conversation, for example. So those are the kinds of people who are introverts but are geared towards people, and I believe that's the sensitivity or sensibility dimension on the DISC profile test. On the other hand, you have the people who really don't care about people. They're introverts, but they care more about tasks and getting things done, for example, but not really talking with people. It's more about, I have a job that I have to do. I don't have to talk to anyone. I sit down and I do it, right? Well, that's I believe that this profile calls it the conscientiousness. I believe it's the C in this profile test, and that's what that talks about is you care about rules, you care about regulations, you care about best practices. You want to have everything very clear in your mind so that you can just go in, you're an organized person, and get things done. So how is this going to affect you? Well, go online and take that test and try and see, okay, these are my strengths. I will recommend you to go for the natural style, not the adapted one. Basically, they give you two measurements. One is the adapted style, which is basically what you show people because you had to adapt, you had to cope based on the environment that you were working in or the people you were dealing with in your family or otherwise. And the other one is the natural one. Go and search the natural one because that's what's going to come off more naturally to you and what's going to put you in the best position to succeed if you're in an environment in which those strengths work best for you. So as you can imagine, being someone who needs that human touch, but in little tidbits with like very specific kinds of people versus being someone who prefers not to do any of that at all and just focus on doing something, getting something done, that's going to seriously affect the kind of occupation or career that you will be better suited for. Does this make sense so far? If so, comment below and let us know what are your thoughts on your strengths and whether you are an introvert who cares more about people or an introvert who cares more about getting things done and not talking to anyone in the entire day. And if this doesn't make sense either, comment below as well and let me know what can we do to help you. Alright, so let's start with some occupations that can be geared towards introverts that prefer to be left alone for long periods of time. And number one is careers in the IT sector. You could be any kind of IT worker and you're probably going to spend most of your days just dealing with the matter at hand, just trying to fix something that has to do either with hardware, software, the networks, the infrastructure when it comes to the information systems, when it comes to security, all that stuff. It's very task-oriented and it can be relatively lonely because you got to be very focused at with the task at hand. So if you are the kind of introvert whose strengths is more in that sector and you really dislike dealing with people whatsoever, the IT department can be great for you. Number two, and this one will surprise you, lawyers. Yes, unlike what you see in awesome series like Suits or many of the other awesome lawyer series and movies in which you have the lawyers just debating stuff in court in a very heated debate, that's not the reality of being a lawyer. Even if you're a litigator, most of your time is just spent reading and writing documents and crafting stuff. And in fact, you could get paid a lot of money as a lawyer at a big firm, at a big law firm, and still be mostly someone who deals with a task. You write a document, you read a document, that's what you do for a living, and that's what being a lawyer is. So if you like the law and you feel like reading all day in a small place or in a cubicle is something that's good for you, then this might be a good career for you. With that said, and obviously there's a lot of potential in law, and there's also a lot of downside if you don't have the ability to potentially get a job in law. But with that said, if this is something that you really like and you want to go into it and you don't want to have that much interaction with people, this could be a good one for you. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be any interaction, but it is considerably more geared towards the task aspect. The next one has to do also with the IT sector, and that's coding and programming. And it doesn't get more task basic than this in the terms of you're just alone, you're doing a lot of code, you're writing a lot of line of code, maybe you're learning a new language like maybe Python's new to you or whatever, and that's what you got to do. You got to build something out of code. Maybe you're a software engineer, maybe you're dealing with cybersecurity, and at the end of the day, you're basically left alone. All you have to do is get the results, and sometimes you don't even have to meet your manager. You can just send him an email and say, hey, this is done, check it out. Another powerful task-oriented introvert career is being a writer or an editor. So why is this so prominent? Well, if you like writing and you like keeping to yourself, then that's awesome, because reading a lot and writing a lot is something that we tend to do when we are alone for a long period of time. And in order to be effective at it, you have to be in a quiet environment and you have to be able to focus. You cannot be in an environment filled with people making noise and doing all those kinds of things. So this is, again, we're being very general here. You can be a writer in any kind of way or sector or industry. So this is something that's also more for you to pick out or to figure out. Yet another task-oriented career for introverts could be graphic design. This is one that we keep mentioning, but again, if you are creating a design or doing something new and you need to keep to yourself and think and have your ideas mesh so that you can actually create and then actually sit down and produce that piece of visual art, then you're going to need to have time for yourself, and you can't just socialize all the time. So a lot of your time is going to be spent by yourself, and if that sounds like heaven, check it out. Now, what about some of the careers that are more for introverts who care about socializing, but again, socializing with a few people in a way that it's more meaningful? Well, one of these careers is being a dentist. That's right. If you're a dentist, you usually take one patient at a time. You go in, you're socializing, but you're in an environment that's completely controlled by you. You set the rules. People tend to behave because you're the expert here, and because you're kind of like destroying them with with all of those things they put in your mouth. And this is something that can be really good for you if you really enjoy the interactions with patients over months and getting to know them and having a high value service. Being a dentist could be great for you if you are an introvert. Focus more on dealing with people than on being alone all the time. The next one in the social introvert side of things is being a counselor or a therapist. Yes, there are a million different types of ways in which you could potentially be a counselor or a therapist, but usually you work with clients, you work with one at a time, and you get to meet clients and get to know them over a relatively long period of time, depending on the kind of therapy you're doing. And it tends to be a quiet environment. You are the one in control. You are the expert, very similar to being a dentist. And in that sense, you can get to enjoy yourself and socialize all you want while feeling energized, not because you are out in the hustle and bustle of the city. The next one in the social introvert aspect, well, more than social, we mean introverts that are more geared towards dealing with people than with simple tasks. Basically is pharmacist. Yes, you can be a pharmacist. You can interact with customers all you want if you want that social interaction, or you can just go back to the background and be the person to make sure that things are running smoothly, to make sure you're picking up the right drugs and delivering them, all that kind of stuff. Finally, an interesting mention is photographer. You can be a photographer, and depending on the type of photography you're doing, you could be more geared towards being an introvert dealing with people, or being an introvert just doing what you need to do to get things done. So if you are the latter, you're probably just taking pictures of landscapes or animals. You're taking pictures, doing photography in a way that you don't need to interact. But if you are the previous type of introvert, then you're most likely dealing with people on weddings, and you have to talk to people, not that much, because still you're focused on the task, but you still get that interaction of dealing with your clients on a day-to-day basis. Now, you might be thinking, whoa, isn't this being an extrovert? You're in a wedding, you're going out in the wild and taking pictures of elephants and mammoths and all that stuff. Well, no, because if you go into the different aspects of the personality, right? You have the extroversion, which means are you an extrovert or an introvert, but you also have your openness, and that openness includes the openness to experiences. So I actually personally know many introverts who love to travel and try new restaurants and try new things, and you will think that will be more of an extrovert kind of thing. Well, no, because it's a different thing altogether. It's a different dimension of your personality that is called openness. Now, if you want me to talk more about that, comment below and let me know. So now you know what are some of the careers that you could do as an introvert, whether you're more focused on tasks or on people. And you also know how you can find out which type of introvert you are. If you like this video, hit the like button below, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment, and share it with your friends.